with this map is this area um, is kind of goofy with the way I think the maps would play out. It's a big, wide open area. I mean, there are some chokes. The Xel'Naga Tower area kind of acts as a choke, and in between these areas, there's kind of choke locations. But you'll see why in a second, why I think this part of the map almost might as well be a giant hole in the center of the map. So, you do have gold bases on this map. There's 2 of them in between the close air positions. So it's kind of like the opposite of Lost Temple, where the close ground positions have the 2 gold bases. Instead, the 2 close air positions have the gold bases. With destructible debris, because we at the StarCraft 2 fan club of Blizzard apparently dig destructible debris. Not that people really do, but it's in every map. And then the only other thing of note that I want to say about this map is you also have destructible debris between the close position naturals, creating once again the infamous 2 entrance natural. Yes, the gimmick is alive and well. So just getting back to how this map feels from the perspective of the base where I spawned. So you start in this main, and the main's kind of cramped. I mean, I have to admit, this is kind of a cramped up main. There's not really a lot of room on this main to build buildings, so it's a little cramped feeling, kind of like a Xel'Naga Caverns feel, where it's kind of cramped. As you come down and follow me here down the ramp to your natural, the naturals are fairly tucked away regardless of positions. The close ground positions are pretty darn close. As you can see, from ramp to natural is not the longest of distances. And there is this cliff in between them too, which would definitely allow Terran who can get drops to potentially guard this area fairly quickly. That's probably the only time I see this middle area actually playing a role, because then you can subvert your opponent using this cliff by going around and down through the center area. It's about the only use for that area. So you take your natural, and in close air and cross positions, I think this map would play out okay. I don't think it's the best as far as balance-wise goes, because it is such a tiny map. And also there's not a lot of bases. You do have a gold base instead of just a lot of natural bases. But in close air, that gold base would be pretty impossible for the more forcefully or not defensive player to take. Whoever is the aggressor and has more map control obviously would have a better chance of taking that base. In cross positions and close ground positions, you could definitely take the gold base as well as that natural base. Thirds would be a little difficult in a lot of the positions, because any third you take, whether you're close ground, cross, or close air from you, any third's going to be pretty extended away from your base. Obviously, these 3 bases in cross positions or close ground positions are going to be the easiest to hold. But a 4th becomes a lot more difficult. If you're in close air, you're going to be able to take this as your natural, and then your 3rd's going to have to be way over here, 4th way over here. If you're in close ground positions, you take your natural, which is kind of towards your opponent, and maybe take this as your 3rd, but then your 4th, you're kind of starting to extend yourself out a little bit. You got a pretty good distance from base to base, up a ramp or over into this corner. So now you're a little more exposed. Cross positions, kind of the same thing. You can kind of more comfortably take these 3 bases. But then your 4th, you're getting extended away again. You're actually expanding towards your opponent in cross positions if you take this or this. So you might end up having to take maybe that base and that base. I mean, it's hard to tell how the map would split. It really depends on how people played the map. And then additionally, because of the way this ridge plays out, I would see most of the fighting going on in this ridge. Most Terran and Protoss players especially would want to be up on this ridge. I think the chokes are better here. You have cliffs, which Terran and Protoss typically can use better than Zerg. You have better chokes, I think, in these areas that you can try and use. compared to these much more wide gaping open areas in the middle. So I think, I mean, if you look at this in the sense of close air positions, you're most likely going to be fighting between this area and this area here. And if you're in close ground positions, you're going to most likely be fighting in this area here to here. I mean, obviously people might try and use this area to flank their opponent, but they're not going to really be able to use it as a direct attack path. So, I mean, from the purposes of flanking and stuff like that, I mean, it's needed in the middle, but I don't see it getting, like, I don't see the two armies setting up in the center of this area to fight each other, because it's more strategically important to make sure you hold these areas because they protect your bases. So overall, I think the map's okay. I could do without this whole area right here. Like, just get rid of it. It seems kind of dumb. It's like this really narrow choke passes that they just chunked onto the map so that you'd have two entrances into the natural so they could preserve their gimmick for these maps. It doesn't really feel like it fits in the map too fluently. You know, if Terran does a strong 2 base, they can push through here, and if they set up siege tanks and start building bunkers here, can hold it really well and threaten you from this direction, as well as maybe drop a tank or two up on here and hold you from this direction too. Protoss obviously can't split up their army, so that would hurt Protoss. Zerg can split up their army, but it would still hurt Zerg because Zerg can't attack into a narrow choke. If Protoss wanted to push a Zerg, they come through this choke. They're a little more exposed because Zerg can counter. So, I mean, I think it's a less of a problem in PvZ than it would be in TVP or TVZ. I think it would give Terran an advantage on this map. So overall, not the smartest thing on this map, I'd say. Plus, the rush distances are short. They're really short. I really don't like the fact that Blizzard insists on using these teeny, tiny little maps with these short rush distances, unless they plan on disabling the close spawn positions. Although on this map, even close air is a relatively short distance ramp to ramp. It's not really all that far. So you'd almost have to hope, if you wanted to get like a good, long, awesome game, to get cross positions on this map, just because it's such a small map. So finally, as I exit out one more time, we are going to head into the last map. I hope this analysis has been somewhat informative for you guys so far. Trying not to get too overly detailed into my thoughts, but I do want to make sure that I address as much as humanly possible about these maps that I think is important for all three of the races. And if you guys think I'm missing something, by all means, you know, leave a comment, say, hey, you know, you kind of missed this. So other people, when they're watching the video, can be like, oh, yeah, I kind of see that, you know, or whatever. I was going to get a drink here, but I need to log in. Love energy drinks. I play better when I drink them. That's why I always have them all the time. We're going to zip through this. Whoop. Replay once again. I do have the sounds and stuff disabled, just to let you know. That's intentional. We don't need sound to do map analysis. So here's test map number 5, which is yet another map that people were pretty concerned about because of the gimmicks that are in the map. Yeah. So you can see it has kind of the Shakira's Plateau feel, and it really has the Shakira's Plateau feel, but more about that in a minute. We have 4 spawn locations, one at the bottom at 6, where I started on this map, 3 o'clock position, 12 o'clock position, and a 3 o'clock position, which is actually right there. Maybe I should do that every time. So we got these 2 positions, these 2 positions. Yeah, alright. So if the first thing you'll notice about this map is there's 2 Xel'Naga towers again. Awesome. There's also 2 gold bases in between the close air positions again, because that seems to be the theme for these maps, is that the golds would be between the close air positions, unlike Lost Temple where they're between the close ground positions. But the one weird thing about this map is normally, if I'm spawning here, this would be considered close air, these 2. This would be considered cross. And then this would be considered close ground. Now how this map actually plays out, though, is that these 2 positions are both close air and close ground positions. The rush distance from ramp to ramp is probably a little bit shorter on this distance at the beginning of the game than this distance. It's a little bit longer. But the distance between these backdoor rocks, yes, hello Shakir's Plateau number 2. Backdoor rocks in your main, from here in your main to your opponent's main, is really frickin' tiny. This is actually like half the distance of Shakir's Plateau in between the two mains. Now, the ramp area is further from your main, so you have a little extra distance, whereas the ramp in Shakir's Plateau would be more like in this area, or this area. Instead, it's pushed back a little more, so it's not as easy for someone to attack up into your main necessarily based on the positioning, so it might be okay, but it still feels incredibly short distance if you spawn in close air positions. The ground distance from here to here feels really tiny. What I think might dispel some people's worries about this particular feature of this map is that because of these shrubberies that you see right here, I think this would be less of a problem than it would be otherwise, because if, say, you're doing TVZ and Terrans put tanks down here, you know, that's what the one thing most people worry about in TVZ is, oh, how can the Terran slow tank push me? Well, if he puts tanks here, you have these wide open air areas next to it, so stuff like Mutalisk and stuff can attack the tanks and potentially pick them off. And then additionally, whether you're Protoss, Terran, or Zerg, if somebody's attacking your backdoor rocks trying to get into your main, if you have bunkers, spine crawlers, or cannons placed right behind these trees, they can't actually spot them to attack them until they come up into the tree line. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a defender's advantage on this map that you don't have on Shakir's Plateau, because the top of the ramp is so wide open, where, say, Terran can throw up 3 Marines and spot that whole top of the ramp and use tanks down here to shoot at banelings over here. They actually have to get the Marine exposed way up here in like this area before they can try and spot to hit something over here with tanks way down here. So it does actually make a pretty sizable difference to make that part of this map a little more defender happy, or defender friendly, I guess would be the word I was looking for. Now, where this map goes and deviates away from making sense in that respect, if you'll follow me here, when you first come down this ramp out of your main, now you have a pretty good tucked away natural. I like the positioning of the naturals. You got one here, you got one over here, got another natural here and here. Relative to the mains, in this on this map, they're pretty decently located. They are pretty wide open. There is 2 entrances to them once again. We'll talk about that more in a second. And the distance is kind of short, but it's not so terrible that it'd necessarily be impossible to defend. It just would be difficult, because it is still a pretty short map where people would still be going, oh, if only close positions didn't happen. If only we just had fixed cross positions, I'd be a happy Zerg player, or a happy Protoss player in a TVP, but then a happy Protoss player on this map in a PvZ. So, you know, it kind of works both ways for Protoss. But, so yeah, just kind of a still short distance, which isn't thrilling. From your natural, you kind of have 2 ways you can go depending on spawn locations. If you're in like a close ground or cross position, you could take this as your natural, and then you could feasibly take these gold expansions as your third. If you're in a close air position, you could take this as your natural, but then it'd be more likely that you'd actually knock down these rocks. And then there's more of these pseudo island expansions, kind of similar to the New Lost Temple. That would be more likely to be your third base, where you have like this little smiley face thing going on. That would be more likely to be a third for most people. Obviously, these rocks could play a role in close positions, as the natural and natural distance is already pretty short coming around here, but is even shorter going up around here. Plus, then you have a cliff advantage depending on the race and your tech setup to set up a defensive position where you can kind of try and defend this area from up on the cliff. So, you know, it feels a little gimmicky still. All these maps kind of feel a little gimmicky. They're not just like there is actually giant petitions in the forums. I kid you guys